Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Thursday afternoon. Got a big show for you today, talking a lot of Texas football. Sark spoke to the media today. We'll take you some clips from that. Get ready for Baylor on Saturday. Talk a little bit of NFL. Of course, the bad news that came out of Dallas camp this afternoon. Our man Joe Cook from Inside Texas is going to be calling in the show. Talk more Texas football on there as well. Remember, you guys are controlling the show. 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is how you can join the show on our text line. We'll have the Patrick's Big Fat Poll coming up in just a little bit, but we will get you involved. Whatever you guys want to talk about, topics, things you want to talk Texas football, Dallas Cowboys, Houston Texans, whatever you got for me. You want to talk about the game tonight? We'll try and get to that as well. 512-337-3776. Y'all drive the show. We just try and keep it on the rails. It's only Thursday. We can keep it on the rails on a Thursday. Sark did speak to the media today, though, as we get ready for Baylor week, as we get ready to start Big 12 conference play. And it is now a type of feeling for Texas fans, at least, and I think for Texas too, where you feel good. You're 3-0. You feel good about being 3-0, but there is a little bit of pause because we've been in this situation before and it hasn't worked out the way we wanted. And you know that you haven't necessarily blown out Wyoming or Rice in the way you wanted to, so you don't necessarily have that level of confidence that you can impose your will offensively, at least, on other teams. And so you say the offense starts to struggle, and then you're getting 3 and outs, and then we get into that problem that the defense, even though the defense has been looking really good, well, what if we, stick them out on the field too much, and then, we've been relying on fourth quarter comebacks, or not even comebacks, but fourth quarter explosions of offense. What if that doesn't happen? There's a lot of that you have to get into, but you just have to prepare the way you prepare for all your other teams and try and figure those things out one by one. Here's Sark talking his opening statement today to get us ready for what we're getting into with Baylor week.
Exciting week for our team, starting Big 12 play. This is always, I love that shift from non-conference to conference play. And I think you could feel it in the energy and the intensity at practice that the guys are really focused, are going about their business in a workmanlike manner, but yet still having a lot of fun. And I think that's ultimately when we're at our best, is when we've got really good mental intensity, really good focus, but yet we still have fun doing what we get to do. And I think the guys kind of exhibited that this week. Throughout the week, and obviously finishing up here this morning, I thought that they just brought a great deal of energy and intent. Our message to them this week was, let's make sure that we're intentional in all that we do. And their intent showed up in all 3 phases. So that was definitely encouraging for me. I think we recognize the challenge of going on the road in a hostile environment. It's going to be a great atmosphere for college football. Like anything, when you go on the road, we got to make sure that we're tighter than ever. We need to be concerned with what we do and how we do it, and be enamored with us. And I think that our guys are understanding of that and are dialed into the task at hand.
So what you're having to do now, one of Sark's problems is a problem he hasn't had at Texas. He's had it at Alabama. He's had it at USC, where you get your team, they're starting to feel okay. You may be a little bit worried of, the offensive passing game didn't look great against Wyoming. There could be some other issues. This Baylor defense is pretty good in the secondary. They have not allowed a lot of passing yards against them. We know Dave Aranda knows how to play in very well. We know he's going to, throw out some looks that Quinn Ewers is not as comfortable with. We know all that's going to happen. So there could be a little bit of worry, but you want to keep their confidence up so that they can go out there and do what they need to do. You want to keep it fun, but you also need to keep them completely lined up in the sense of penalties, in the sense of, not letting big plays get past you on the defensive end. All of that is kind of where you have to end up in a week of practice, where you start Big 12 conference play, where you guys are going to be going for week after week. It's going to end up, the bruises and everything that happens in between, and the fatigue is going to start getting real as classes start to pick up more. All of those things, you're trying to keep them as loose as you can to start, because it's going to be a long season. And as much as you can say it, you can't. You have to prepare for them, because young people will always go full force in and not leave anything on, not leave anything in the tank. So you kind of have to do that. I know it's all gas, no brakes, but you can you slow it down a little bit at points and in practice and just keep yourself healthy and ready to go into the season. Sark was asked about measuring the energy in practice, so of how he can tell that he feels good about a week of practice. Because we know we've heard him say this time and time again. I felt we had a really good week of practice. It doesn't necessarily mean as much because we've seen him say that, and then they go out and put up, a terrible game. We've also seen him say they had a good week of practice and then go beat Alabama. So, what does he mean when he says, I felt the energy was good. I felt the practice was where I wanted to be. Here's what Sark had to say about kind of measuring the energy of practices.
I think the one thing I always look for, can I hear our team, right? Anytime practice is quiet, that's probably not a good thing for us. We preach communication so much. And so are we communicating on a high level? Are guys celebrating plays by other players? Or is there a little bit of banter back and forth from offense to defense? That tells me they're engaged. And this week was very vocal at practice. I mean, you definitely could feel it, even in stretch, that you could feel the guys were definitely engaged and ready to go. And then that carried through practice. So that's probably the biggest thing for me. And then ultimately in meetings, our meetings are very interactive. The one we just got out of, when I'm asking questions, multiple people are answering it. They're just engaged. And to me, that's always a good sign.
So you want to have people engaged. You want to have the team. Communication is one of the biggest things in football that is not necessarily talked about, which is, somewhat ironic, but communication of this offensive line, being able to communicate when you're going to see things in this Dave Aranda defense where you may not necessarily know what's coming at you. And you may say, well, look, there's 2 or 3 things that could be happening. Let's make sure we have all of our bases covered so we don't leave Quinn Ewers out to dry. And we can at least, if nothing else, throw the ball away and take another down. We don't want to get a sack. We don't want to let our quarterback take a big hit. If we're running the ball, we don't want to, basically allow a guy to come right up the middle and hit him for a loss. So you need to be able to have that communication. So you want to see the team feeling good, talking to each other. You don't want to get to a point where people start to get a little too tense in practice. Now we'll get into a little bit more of what you need for the game plan for playing Baylor. And one of the first things we'll start with is pretty easy. CJ Baxter, you have Jonathan Brooks. He's been putting up good numbers, but you'd like to see CJ Baxter because we know Baylor has allowed a lot of yards on the ground. So the more running backs you have, the more running ability you have as Texas is kind of a good thing to have in your back pocket. You don't want to rely on it. You'd like to be able to get your passing game going. You'd really like to be able to get Quinn Ewers feeling a little bit better. You'd like to be able to take your strength of what you hope your strength is, which is your passing game, which Sark wants to be his strength, and put it up against a defensive team strength and be able to impose your will. We don't know if that'll happen or not. But here's Sark when he asked about CJ Baxter. He sat out last week with the injury. Here's what he had to say today about CJ Baxter.
Yeah, he looked great today. I was really, really excited about watching him practice today. Best practice he's had in 2 weeks. So I feel good about him going Saturday.
So we know CJ Baxter should be back in the game. We know Jonathan Brooks had an amazing game against Wyoming. So we don't know, Jonathan Brooks could have won the starting job back. I don't know if he wants to do that to CJ Baxter, who was the starting job. I know they've been listed on the depth chart as one but CJ Baxter started the last 2 games. So we will see who actually starts the game. I don't think it's going to matter. I think they're both going to get lots of carries, especially against a Baylor defense that has allowed some good yardage. We know Texas State ran against them pretty well. We know Utah ran all over them. Long Island actually ran over them pretty well. So you can run on this Baylor team. They don't have the size. Aranda has not necessarily, drafted this or recruited the size for this Baylor team. He likes to be able to have guys be able to get outside. So you may not be able to do as much of the screen passes as Sark likes to do because those guys may be able to defend outwardly and have the speed a little bit more. But if you can block them off, this is a game where the offensive line for Texas can start to try and impose will and start to gain a little bit more confidence going forward in Big 12 play. Here's Sark talking about the strengths of Baylor.
Well, I look at them like they're 0-0, just like us. We're both 0-0 in conference play. And they're a good football team. I think they kind of got caught a little off guard in week 1. They were leading Utah in the 4th quarter of that game. So I think they could very easily be sitting here 3-0. And so I think the strength of that team is, I think they've got a culture in place, with Coach Aranda now. They believe in what they do up front. They love to run the football. They're big and physical on offense. and they believe in stopping the run defensively. And then they have really good speed on the perimeter. Historically, Baylor's always been one of the faster teams in our conference, and this year doesn't seem much different.
So they're going to have the speed on that defense. You're going to have to be able to get – I don't know if those screen passes, the out routes are necessarily going to be as great, but a guy like Jonathan Brooks who is able to bust through those first couple tackles, run strong, and then bust out with speed, I think Jonathan Brooks could have a really good game against Baylor. C.J. Baxter we haven't seen as much of, but he's got that speed as well. As long as he's able to kind of break through some of those arm tackles early, that could be a big part for this Texas game. Now, the question is, again, we talked about it last week when we were going to Wyoming. We knew that their front seven was really good. It ended up being that they decided to back out and basically try to cover the pass more than the run, and the run game opened up much wider. However, Texas still came out, even they wanted to, address the run game early. They didn't really. They still tried to pass the ball early. That's why we saw the first half not look as good as we wanted to look. So it'll be interesting to see if Sark now comes out and tries to just run the ball and set the pace early, that Texas is going to be able to run the ball and average 4 or 5 yards a carry against this Baylor team. I think that's what they like to do. I think they would like to set the pace a little bit earlier and try and get this team feeling a little bit better that they've been feeling. I know that, you still want to get Quinn Ewers in his rhythm. You still want to be able to get Quinn Ewers to feel okay with throwing some passes so you can get those deeper passes downfield once the defense has to start constricting on you. Because if you're averaging 5 yards a carry, those safeties are going to have to cheat up more and more and more. And the linebackers are going to have to cheat up more and more. And everybody's going to have to cheat up to try and make sure that, Baxter or Brooks does not break one, because both those guys have that ability. You're going to have to be able to establish that run game in my mind, put them on the 8 ball, put them behind the 8 ball, put them where they don't really have a choice in the matter, where they can say, well, we're going to lose 48-0 with them just running the ball down our throats, or we can go ahead and try and slow that down a little bit and then hope that Quinn Ewers isn't on. Because if I'm being honest, I know teams really want to slow down Texas passing because they know that's what Sark wants to do. So a lot of these opposing coaches and opposing defenses really focus on shutting down Xavier Worthy, shutting down JT Sanders, and trying to confuse Quinn Ewers, because they figure that'll make the game plan a lot easier if we just take away their passing. But Texas can run the ball. We know the old DK are saying 3 things can happen when you pass the ball. 2 of them aren't good. So if you run the ball, it's not necessarily the end of the world. I think this is the first year we've seen Sark that he's really okay with running the ball. And it's not, he had Bijan and Roschon, so he did it last year, but I don't know if he was ever as thrilled about it. So I think that you have to be able to work on, I think you have to be able to try and stop that run at some point. And if you're Sark, you have to be able to run the ball early in this game. Sark also talked about the Baylor defense.
Well, I think one, I don't want to keep belaboring the point, but they're well coached. Dave's been doing it a long time at multiple stops: Utah State, Wisconsin, LSU, now Baylor. And it's definitely his defense. I know they've changed coordinators, but it's his defense. And so the reality is, 1, they've got the scheme. 2, they've got really big bodies up front. They're a physical front. They're long. They do a good job of kind of with gap integrity. And when they're playing really good, they don't have to, kind of put an extra hat in the box to defend the run. They can play the pass and with their coverage units, whether it's the 5 DBs, depending on the formation, and trust that front to defend the run. And then they've got a multitude of ways that they can play their coverages in the back end to match your routes. And so, you add all that up, that bodes well from a good defensive standpoint, especially when you're at home, and things can get harder on the offense from a communication standpoint.
So you want to run the ball. This is a defense that we know the communication needs to be key. There's certain things that you have to take care of. But if you're going to say they're going to try and show you as much as they can, they're going to try and confuse and disguise things as much as you can, that Dave Aranda knows what has worked in years past against Quinn Ewers. He knows that there's certain things that he'll be able to do against a young quarterback that he might be able to trick him into. And I don't think Quinn Ewers is a turnover-prone quarterback, which means he's going to hold on to the ball too long, which means it's either a throwaway, it's a sack, or it's a, he may go and try and run it as well. But you really need to try and find a way to just move the chains early in this game, because I think if Texas is able to get 4 or 5 yards on that first carry, take themselves out of the position of being in, a third and long or a second and long even, and allow yourself to maybe take a shot throwing the ball on a third down and third and short, and you go for it on fourth down because you're imposing your will on running the ball. Those types of play, that type of game plan for me is a much easier game plan than walking in, knowing what you're going up against, and still trying to get Quinn Ewers into that rhythm early, something that Sark likes to do, and still trying to throw on, basically run the ball on first down, throw the ball on second down, and then hope for a good run play on third down. And if you maybe didn't get that run play you wanted on first down, and it's now 3rd and 6, now you got to throw the ball again, and you're already back on the bench. And that just seems like it's a lot of what Sark does on those first drives, that I'd like to see a run defense that has seen that has holes. And I think you can break some big ones too on this team. Because I think once you get through that middle, everyone's going to be so caught up. I like that. I think we do need to throw the ball in the game. Of course we do. But if you set them up with that run early and you basically tell them you can do whatever you want in the run, I mean, we saw Alabama do it to Texas. They started to run the ball early, and once Jaron Thompson started creeping up, they threw it right over the top of him. So you just want to get those safeties and those linebackers to creep up a little bit, not be able to bite on everything, not be able to shadow Xavier Worthy. You want him to have to watch in the run game and be concerned about that run game, so Xavier Worthy can get out and get man-on-man coverage, and A.D. Mitchell can get man coverage. And once they're in man coverage, I trust Quinn. But if we're playing zones and if we're having safeties back helping out, it's a lot tougher for Quinn Ewers. And that's where, it's something Sark talks about a lot, is trusting your training. Is you have to trust your training when you're out there and you're playing on an opposing team's field. And you have to be able to trust when you know that they're showing something and you don't necessarily see it, and you see it a couple plays before you get to halftime, before you can go back and talk to your coach. You have to trust and say, okay, if this guy looks like he's doing this and we know what the coaches said, we have to trust what the coaches called, so we're going to stick with the play. We're not going to go rogue, but we also know how to trust our training that, hey, call out. Let the entire line know this guy may be able to come through. Here's Sark talking about trusting your training once you get to the Big 12 schedule and how important it is on teams that are game planning for you.
I don't know if it ever necessarily becomes easier because of who you're playing. I think in the Big 12, we've got really good coaches, starting with Coach Aranda this week and his staff. He's done it at a high level for a long time. And so it's easy to fall back on, the last, few years and whatnot, and the multitude of things that he does. But inevitably good coaches are going to find ways to try to defend you or try to attack you, whatever phase that you're talking about. And so trusting your training is counting on your fundamentals, your techniques, trusting the calls that are being made around you and the communication that's being made, and that making sure that everybody's on the same page and cohesive with what we're doing. And so the opponent necessarily doesn't matter. I think it's the focus being on us. And so regardless of the look that you get, that we execute that call in particular to the best of our ability. And then it's our job as coaches to make the proper adjustments, in game, on the sideline, or in the locker room at halftime, to try to attack things accordingly.
And so you have to be able to trust in those early downs in this first half, where Texas has struggled this season. You're going to have to trust yourself a little bit more that this still is a pretty young team. You have guys that have experience because Sark kind of implemented his guys. He's implemented a lot of freshmen and sophomores. So you're going to have to trust some guys that may not be, 4th or 5th year seniors, which is what you want to, people will see now. You're going to have to trust your players to get out there and read these defenses and trust the game, the film they've watched, and trust that you've taught them well enough that they can go and make those adjustments on the field. Text line's open, 512-337-3776. We're about to get to the big fat poll of the day. We'll get to some of these texts too. Brought in Chris as a coach. You want to run the ball. That's a huge thing. I think that he did bring in Chris as a coach for a couple reasons. One, you have the option to bring in a really good coach to teach you some things that may be in your blind spots. I think he also brought him in because he knows this is a weak spot of my game is sticking to the run. I like to throw the ball, maybe bring in a guy who can explain to me and make running the ball a little bit more fun and a little bit more sexy. And I think that's helped out. I think it's helped him out this season. Let's see. Do you think Baylor won't score? I think Baylor will score. Of course, I think Baylor will score. I just using it as a reason that you're not going to maybe be able to put up the numbers you want to put up offensively. And that's what we'll get into a Patch Big Fat poll as well. I do think Baylor will score. And running the ball a lot is scary. Low scoring is not good for us. Running the ball a lot is not scary. Throwing the ball a lot is scary. Running the ball a lot, if you just march down the field and run the ball and you score and you score and you score and you score and you're constantly in scoring range, it gets a little bit scary in the red zone when everything shores up. Running in the red zone is really hard. Running for 70, 80 yards of the field, 70, 80 yards of the field, it's not that scary. Those last 20 is pretty scary because now it shores up and now you're kicking field goals and field goals don't beat touchdowns. We all know that. So you do have to have a passing game. In all of this, I'm not saying you don't throw the ball. I'm saying instead of throwing the ball 2 out of 3 downs, you're running the ball 2 out of 3 downs. That's all I'm saying, is you want to take your majority of plays and run the ball early. So later in the game, when you need to pull away and when you start to get them and once they start to creep up, now you start throwing over the top of them, using Quinn Ewers, what he can do, finding guys on the outside, getting guys in matchups where a guy like Xavier Worthy has one guy to beat, or a guy like JT Sanders has one guy to beat, or a guy like A.D. Mitchell has one guy to beat. That's what I'm saying. And we're talking like we don't have a future NFL quarterback. We do have a future NFL quarterback, but we know his limitations. There's limitations of guys in the NFL. And if they have a defense that they don't necessarily throw a great against, you don't necessarily want to stick them out and give them a chance to fail because you're making the entire game plan based on their shoulders when you can make it a team effort and you can make it balanced. And yes, Sark is a brilliant game planner. He hasn't looked as great this year. I don't think there's any doubt about it that his scripts were working fabulously last year, and they haven't worked the exact same this year. Part of that is Rice in Wyoming came at you with very different game plans that you had no ability to plan for. Once we get into the Big 12, that'll change a bit. Now you are playing against a backup quarterback that hasn't seen a lot of playing time, so you're going to have to change that up. It is Dave Aranda is a defensive coach, so you may not know this offense as well as you want to know it. Going up against Sawyer Robinson is the quarterback, you don't know. They've been trying to throw the ball downfield. Not what you would expect from a backup quarterback. But at least they have a little bit of film on Sawyer Robinson. But we'll see. We will see how that team comes out and see if the game plan fits into what Sark wants to do. Let's get to Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day on the Horn.
Big Fat Poll of the day today. We asked you yesterday about what you wanted to see improve the most in the Baylor game. You guys went with passing. That's not surprising that you would like to see the passing game improve. I agree. We'd like to see that passing game improve. And kind of going on to that a lot of reason that people seem to have a problem with Texas is not that they've won 3 games. It's that those games you haven't had that big win yet. You haven't had that decisive big win, the big score, the number where everybody can look over at it and say, oh my God, look at what Texas is doing. You haven't had that yet. I don't think it's going to happen against Baylor because they're just a good defensive team. Aranda's a good defensive coach. They are not the same team they were last year. Your defense is able to get some turnovers. Sawyer Robinson is known for turnovers. Maybe you get some, maybe a few more shots, maybe a few more plays. You missed a lot of plays last week. Texas probably would have scored another touchdown or two if they had a few more plays. They just played 30 less plays than they normally have in a game because Wyoming was playing really good clock management and Texas was running the ball well. So, you slowed it down a little bit. So the Big Fat Poll today, tell us on the text line, 512-337-3776. How many points does Texas have to score for you to be comfortable with this offense after the Baylor game? What's the line of points scored that you say, okay, this is the offense I was looking forward to seeing. This is what was the Sark bill of goods when we signed him. This is the Quinn Ewers bill of goods. All these receivers. What's the number? What's the number where you feel okay? And I'm not even talking about defense. I'm going to assume the defense is going to be okay against a backup quarterback. I assume, they're going to get some points because they're going to get some plays through. They're not a bad team. They're just not playing really well right now, but they have some talent on that team. What's the number for you? We haven't hit 40 this season. Is it 40? We got a couple of 42s up there. What's the number for you where you will feel comfortable with this defense? If you want to type in what you want to see, the final score, what you want to see in the first half versus the second half, type all that in, send it to us, 512-337-3776 is the text line. But what's the number? Where do you feel okay with this defense? Is it a just, or with this offense, is it a just win? Is it a I don't care, score 3 points, win 3-0? I don't think anybody really feels that. If you do, you're kind of lying. Tell me what it is. What's the number you want this offense to put up and you would feel okay? You walk into next week and say, okay, you know what, our offense, that was just, we were just thrown off by playing non-conference. We're ready to go. What's the number, and what's the number in the first half? What do you want to see in the first half? Let me know. Text line, 512-337-3776. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Joe Cook from Inside Texas, talking more Texas and Baylor, coming up here on The Horn, 101.9 AM 1260, The Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex on a Thursday afternoon, playing big songs as we get into Big 12 conference play all week long. Love you guys hitting us up on the text line, 512-337-3776. Big fat poll of the day. How many points does Texas have to score for you to be comfortable with this offense after the game? Give me first half, give me second half, give me the breakdown, however you want to give it to me. 512-337-3776. How many points do you feel comfortable Texas winning this game? Whatever else you want to talk about, hit us up on the text line. But joining us right now on the Vaqueros Cafe and Cantina hotline, we'll ask you about that question a little bit too. Man from inside Texas, follow him for all of your Texas sports needs. You can follow him at Joseph Cook 89. My man Joe Cook on the line with us. How you doing today, Joe?
Doing great, Patrick. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so Joe, we're in the Big 12 conference play, 3-0 for the first time in over a decade. Feeling good. What is the inside Texas view of this Texas team right now? Are you feeling pretty good about things right now, or are you like many Texas fans and saying you've seen this movie before and it may not end the right way?
Man, have we seen this movie before?
I don't think we've seen this particular one.
Exactly. Normally all the preseason expectations are just that, preseason expectations. It kind of lived up to them at this point. It hadn't been perfect, hasn't always been pretty, but 3-0 is 3-0 is 3-0, and there are flaws with that phrase. You are what your record says you are, but Texas passed a bunch of tests in multiple ways and has 3 wins as a result. So I don't think this is the same as some of the movies we've seen in the past, and I think that this upcoming week against Baylor is going to be a good place for that team to show what I believe is going to be a conference, that show that they're going to be what I believe is a conference title contenders.
Yeah, all right. So we've seen in non-conference play, does it feel to you like it's a little bit of a misnomer of this passing game when you see Rice kind of throw some different looks at Texas they weren't necessarily prepared for, that Wyoming threw a completely different look that they'd done in the past, but the fact that they basically gave up on the run game to defend the pass, is this something that Sark's going to have to be prepared for all season, or is this kind of the anomaly? And once we get to Big 12 play, this passing game might be able to figure out some of their problems?
It's 6 of one thing, half dozen of the other. With Rice, the staff in Houston with Mike Bloomgren, they decided to make a switch over the course of the offseason to that 3-3-5 with 3 down linemen and 3 safeties. And that's always been a problem for Steve Sarkisian dating back to even a little bit at Alabama. But definitely during his time at Texas, the 3-3-5 flyover has given him issues. And basically the thing that he's got to do is just run over it. And that's what he did versus Rice. Alabama, Nick Saban's been running the same defense probably since he showed up in 2007. And it's the same defense that Steve Sarkisian went against for 2 years while in Tuscaloosa. He knew how to scout it. He knew what he was looking for. And he knew the right ways to attack it, and they attacked it successfully. Then Wyoming comes in, and like you mentioned, they showed it in, I guess, small doses, and they came out and majored in it, and that really cut down the Texas passing attack. They had those 3 safeties deep. They were not going to let Texas beat them through the air, and eventually Texas beat them on the ground. That's going to be an issue as far as Oklahoma runs that defense, Iowa State runs that defense, TCU runs that defense, Kansas State runs that defense. So there's 4 opponents right there who are going to try that out and make that an issue. As far as Baylor goes, that's not really what Dave Aranda has done. Dave Aranda's had his system that was successful at Utah State, Wisconsin, LSU, and during the first part of his tenure at Baylor. I don't think Dave Aranda, at a point where he's 1-2 and really cannot afford to go 1-3 with the way his team has looked so far, especially losing to Texas State. I don't feel like Dave Aranda is going to try within the course of a week, unless they did this during prep for Long Island, which, again, that doesn't seem smart either, considering if you lose Long Island, then you're 0-3, and then your season's just in turmoil, even more so than it seems already. So Dave Aranda's probably going to run the same stuff he has. It's not that 3-3-5 flyover. It is it's similar to it, but Steve Sarkisian's gone against Aranda before, not just Texas versus Baylor, but even Alabama versus LSU, and probably some other times they've bumped into each other with some film study or things like that. So that defense and that type of problem is not going to pop up this week. And I think Texas should be able to handle not only from a schematic perspective, but from a talent perspective, anything Baylor is able to throw at them. But going down the road, going down the rest of the schedule and looking at that defense that is very common across the Big 12, that's definitely going to have to be something Steve Sarkisian figures out. The key is to run over it, but Steve Sarkisian has to make the cognizant decision or the conscious decision to run over it and not try to run his offense in a way to pass around it.
Yeah, and that's something I've seen Sark kind of this year seem a little bit more okay with running the ball. And we know he brought in Paul Chryst to help out, that's a power run guy. And I think partially not having Bijan and Roschon, so it's not even like it's his guys now. And I feel there's just he seems to be a little bit more comfortable with it, which is crazy because you lost Bijan and Roschon. But we saw Jonathan Brooks show up in the fourth quarter for 2 games now. CJ Baxter is reported back healthy. That's what he said today. Is this CJ Baxter's team right now? And this is a question I get a lot. If he's going to have a 1,000-yard rusher, is it going to be CJ Baxter or is it going to be Jonathan Brooks? I don't know the answer to it because you would guess CJ Baxter because that's who he seems to want to play. But Jonathan Brooks seems the closest to it already. Is this going to be a pretty even share going in Baylor and forward, or is this it's CJ Baxter's job to lose still?
I wonder what it's going to be now that injury is taking place. CJ Baxter's either left one of his first 3 games or did not even participate in it. And that's definitely a player that Steve Sarkisian wants to have over the course of the season. Even so, Jonathan Brooks has played really well. He's had those drops. Yeah, that's tough to look past. But he's run hard. He's run hard in critical moments. He did what he needed to do versus Alabama on that 3rd and 7 and also on the goal line. Did definitely what he needed to do against Wyoming. So I think it's going to be tough for Sark to just go ahead and say, you know what, no, we're going to switch it back to Baxter just because he started. The other thing is Jonathan Brooks has SoCal tendencies, and I wrote about that today over on Inside Texas. If you go back and look at Hallettsville, and no disrespect to the Brahmas, but it is Hallettsville. It's, I think, 3A football or something like that. But Jonathan Brooks had over 3,500 rushing yards as a senior and almost 300 attempts. Like, this is someone who knows that, when the game's on the line, he knows that he's going to be able to get the rock, and he's going to get it again, and he's going to get it again, and he's going to get it again. He's got that mentality. Granted, Baylor's going to be a little bit different than Lorena, that he rushed for 501 yards against and 9 touchdowns against back in 2020. But I think Jonathan Brooks has the mentality and even has the skill set to be able to take on a workload. And we saw that last week. We saw 20 carries out of him in a game that Texas won by 3 scores. A lot of that did, of course, have to do with Jaden Blue fumbling at the end of the game last week, with Keelan Robinson kind of being in his role. But I think Brooks, if Steve Sarkisian needs someone to take 20, 25 carries, Brooks can do it. And I think if that's what keeps CJ Baxter fresh, maybe going forward for Kansas and then for Oklahoma and for the rest of the year, that would be a trade-off that they make.
All right, let's move over to the defensive end. Talking to Joe Cook, managing editor of Inside Texas. You can follow Inside Texas at Inside Texas. Follow Joe Cook at Joseph Cook 89. So flipping over to defensive end, the defense has been pretty good. They've looked pretty good, except for a few plays that have eked out over the top of them. Sawyer Robertson has thrown the ball pretty deep this season. His average in the few throws he's had are he's chunking it downfield. Is Texas going to have to back off a little bit and try and play a guy like Jaron Thompson who may get burned a little bit? Makes good plays up front when you leave him up closer, but maybe drop him or drop these safeties back a little bit more just to keep Baylor in front of them? Or do you just hope that Sawyer Robinson does that and you got play man coverage and can get the picks?
I'm leaning more towards the latter. This Baylor offense, you'll see them run outside a lot, outside zone, trying to get tackles on the move. It's an offense where they're basically trying to major in a very specific run scheme and perfect that run scheme. But the difference between this Baylor team and the Baylor team that maybe won the Big 12 a couple of years ago is talent along the offensive line, and it is simply not the same. So I think you really trust your defensive front with guys like Devondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, even Barron Sorrell. You trust your linebackers, and you say, look, you try to run the ball, and if you can convert some, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 7s against good coverage in third down situations, well, credit to you. But I think that's what Sawyer Robertson's going to have to face a lot of. And I also am just not really that fearful of the Baylor wide receiver core. They've had some dudes in the past, whether it be under Art Flowers, whether it be under Rule, and even in the early stages of the Aranda era. But there is not that type of athlete at wide receiver right now for the Bears, so I wouldn't trust. And definitely not the type of athlete at wide receiver that could put Jaron Thompson or anybody else in a bind, even if they're in the right spot, like Bama had. So I really just kind of play the Bears honestly, just because I really do not think that they'll be able to run against honest fronts. And at that rate, nobody's really run against honest fronts except for Jalen Milroe, and that was kind of impromptu and not even designed. So I'm not really concerned about Sawyer Robertson. He doesn't have great stats. He doesn't have great completion percentage. I say keep him honest on first and second down, and then make Sawyer Robertson beat an honest defense on third down. And until he's able to do that, keep that strategy going forward.
Yeah, I like that. And Sawyer Robinson is somewhat turnover prone, so the more you put him in those situations, we know Sark talked about it today, the turnovers are very important to him, so he would love to see that. What is, in your mind, the way Baylor can win this game? So if we're saying Texas, they're the favorites, they're looking, they just play their game, they should be able to win. How does Baylor throw a wrench into Texas' season? What do they have to do in this game? What do fans have to be scared of for Baylor to do?
I think it's turnovers. That's always kind of the magic bullet when it comes to any team. If you have more possessions than the other, you got more chances to, go ahead and put the ball either in the end zone or through the upright. So Texas running backs have to protect the football, and you heard Steve Sarkisian really compliment Jonathan Brooks for being able to do that today. Quinn Ewers has to protect the football. That's been what he's been really good at. Hasn't thrown a pick this year, knock on wood, that continues. But that's the key, because if you give Baylor extra opportunities, they're going to try and strike. They really are. They're going to try and take advantage of those sudden change opportunities. And those are good chances for offense. So make sure you limit your turnovers, just because I don't see on standard downs or even money downs where Baylor really has an advantage over either Texas side of the ball. And also just limiting, special teams plays. Texas has been great on special teams. I even wrote this week that they've enjoyed elite special teams play. Baylor doesn't have, I think the kicker's name was John Mayers or something like that. I don't think he's there anymore, and I don't think, based on the fact that Texas puts starter caliber players on special teams, they're going to be able to outman Baylor's special teams. I would think that this would be a great opportunity for Texas to go ahead and get their first block kick of the year. If they're able to do that, then I think that would kind of tell the story of how this game is going, and be a good sign to the Longhorns, obviously.
There you go. I like that one. Talking to Joe Cook, managing editor of Inside Texas. You can follow Inside Texas at Inside Texas. Check that out. And also follow Joe Cook. Good follow at Joseph Cook 89. So we've been asking everybody on the text line, what's the number? Because I know people are upset that Texas is not, didn't put up more numbers on Rice, didn't put up bigger numbers on Wyoming. So people want to see this offense really get going. Baylor is a good defense. If you could put up some numbers on them on the road in a Big 12 environment that is hostile, in a, against a defense and Dave Aranda run defense, really kind of screw up Dave Aranda's season, where he is now definitely on the hot seat, being 1-3 if they lose this game. What's the number, though? If you were to pick a number to say, this is the number I want to see scored points offensively, what's the number you would look at?
I think you have to at least put that number at 30. That, to me, that's scoring on 5 possessions, whether it be 4 touchdowns and, or in a field goal or stuff like that. Think about it this way: with 2 pretty conventional offenses, guys that like to run the ball, this clock is going to drain at a pretty good pace. At least it should, unless the Big 12 wants to review every other play. So you have to consider that when you're looking at scoring, and think about the fact that you're probably going to have 9 drives, something like that, maybe 10 drives, something in that neighborhood. So if you're scoring on 5 of your 9 drives and maybe limiting Baylor to scoring on 3 of them, I think that's what you're looking for. And 5, if you're scoring on 5 drives and you're putting the ball in the end zone for, let's say, 4 of them, that's 28 points right there. Get one more, you got 31. Inside Texas for our roundtable where all our staff members make a prediction. I think I put down 38 to 21. I think that's a pretty safe number. That's still covering if you're looking at it from that direction. And I think walking into a night game, a pretty good environment, despite what's gone on with Baylor this season, especially against a motivated crowd who will want to send off the Longhorns to the SEC with a loss to Baylor in whatever the 113th matchup. I think if you're able to walk away with a cover on the road, 38 to 21, something like that, you got to feel pretty happy, especially as you come back to Austin and get ready for Kansas, who may be one of the top 4 teams in the Big 12.
Definitely one of the top teams you are playing this season. Joe Cook there. Before I let you go, I know you're also an Astros fan. If you follow Joe Cook on Twitter at JosephCook89, you will know that he is a Astros fan. With everybody so close, at the end of the season, Astros have a half game on the Rangers and Mariners. Rangers-Mariners series starts tomorrow. Do the Astros pull it out and win another AL West, or is this the end of the AL West run?
I think they get it. There's no reason to trust that Rangers bullpen. And I think the Astros will be able to win their final stretch of games. They got to take care of the Royals, which, man, that's such a weird thing to say after watching this team all year. But I trust this Astros team that they'll finally get it together over the course of the final week and raise another division title and be able to go to the postseason and probably work their roster in a way that makes it stronger for the postseason as opposed to how it looked for the regular season with the starting rotation, things like that. So I'm always excited. The heart rate always gets pumped up during the month of October between Texas football and Astros baseball. I'm excited it'll be 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, the 7th straight year doing that. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that weekend I even forgot. So it's going to be Oklahoma, Texas, Cowboys, 49ers, and probably Astros, Rangers in the playoffs, or those teams playing. There will be a lot where it's going to be a stressful weekend, that October weekend. I'll tell you that much. Joe Cook, thank you for joining us, managing editor of Inside Texas. Follow him at Joseph Cook. Follow Inside Texas at Inside Texas. Joe Cook, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some good insight there, getting ready for Baylor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Patrick.
Joe Cook there. Remember, you guys can join the conversation. 512-337-3776. We're asking, what number do you feel comfortable with Texas having to score if you feel comfortable with this offense? How many points they have to score? Tell us in the first half. Tell us in the second. Tell us how they do it. All of that. Whatever you want to text us. Any other questions or things you want to talk about on the show, you guys drive the show on the text line. We appreciate you texting in. We'll get to those texts when we come back. We'll get into this in hour 2 as well. We'll get into all of that right here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 101.9, AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Oh, man. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn on a Thursday afternoon, getting you ready for the beginning of Big 12 Conference play against Baylor. So we're playing big songs all week. Had to throw in some Houdini. You always got to love some Houdini. Throwing some old school right there. Houdini Big Mouth right there. We're playing some big songs all week as our theme of the week. Big thanks to Joe Cook from Inside Texas. He is always a great follow. If you haven't followed him, our follow Inside Texas. Keep up if you're a fan of Texas football, which I know you guys are. It is a great follow, and he's very knowledgeable and helping you out. And I'm hoping that, Sue, I know Chan says you're still concerned. Hey, look, the game plan shouldn't be a bet. Now, to cover, to get Texas where we want them to be, and of course, it's Big 12 conference play. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. We did ask the question. Big fat poll today. We're going to get to some of these. We're going to have to get to some of them on the top of the 12 because you guys are killing it. Top of the 6 o'clock hour, we'll get to some more. You guys are killing it on the text line. Really appreciate it. Show is always more fun when you guys play along. 512-337-3776. Keep sending in what you want to talk about. We're going to get into some NFL at the top of the hour, too, talking about the best 0-2 teams, the worst 2-0 teams. I know we had someone text in earlier asking about coach on the hot seat. We can get into that a little bit there on the 0-2 teams. We'll get into a little bit of that, talking some NFL, and, of course, some more Texas football. We'll keep that rolling into the 6 o'clock hour, and, of course, your text. We can get into some numbers, though. How many points does Texas have to score? If you feel comfortable, when you walk away and you say, all right, this offense is doing good, I'm not worried about it. And I think the number is going to be about here. I think the number is 40 for you to feel comfortable. I think 30 is okay. I don't think you're mad at 30. But I think you're happy at 40. Then once you get to that 40 number, I think that's there. So we get 40 plus here as long as they cover. 42 as long as they cover. I think, but that's still 40. You're looking at that 40 number. 30, I'm okay with 30. And I like you brought in Chris as a coach to run. I agree with that as well. Another 40 plus in here. While they're down, reviews are much quicker. Another 49 versus OU would be awesome. I agree. But we're not quite at OU week. I agree, though, that would be good. You want a 30-17 final, first half 20. That is not a cover, I believe. I have to look at that line again, but I think it's around 2 touchdowns, so that may not be a cover. I don't know this. I don't have much faith in the Baylor offense. I think the reality is, can Texas get up there and get the 30? Because I figure Baylor's going to run the ball some too. This clock you may not get the amount of plays. Like some of these other teams that may have put up different numbers, and, Texas State put up decent numbers against them. They also allowed 30-something points. I don't think Texas is going to allow 30 points against this Baylor team. Let's get one more, and we'll get ahead, and we'll take our break. We'll get to the top of the hour, and we'll keep going on these. I need 40 points per game moving forward on offense. On defense, I want to win by 28+. That's a pretty big one once we get into Kansas. I'll tell you that. That might be a bit much when we get to Kansas. I like it against Baylor, though. I want to see 40 points, too. I'm with you. I want to see 40 points. We'll get to more of your text. Keep texting what you want to talk about in the 6 o'clock hour, 512-337-3776. And how many points do you want to have Texas score to make yourself happy, make yourself content, comfortable with this Texas offense going forward into Big 12 play? Send that number in, 512-337-3776. We'll read more of your text when we come back here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back hour 2 here on the Sports Complex on a Thursday afternoon. Rolling with you guys. Text line's open. 512-337-3776. Loving everybody texting in today. You guys drive the show. Make the show so much more fun when you text in. We're asking you, big fat poll today. How many points does Texas have to score for you to be comfortable with the offense? How many points? So we'll ask a bland one, and we'll ask the more in-depth one. If you want to get more in-depth, how many in the half? Do you want to see him throw the ball more? What do you want to see from this offense that's going to make you start to feel comfortable going into Big 12, starting to play some of these harder games, playing against a Kansas, playing against a Oklahoma? What is going to make you feel a little bit better about these games? What is it going to be? What's the number for you for Texas? Getting back to your text, 512-337-3776 is how you can send in the text. Not an app guy has 50. 50 may be rough. I'll feel real comfortable in the offense if we score 50. If that offense starts rolling where you run the ball well enough and you start to go roll downhill and then the deep ball opens up and Quinn's hitting everybody and Quinn's feeling like he's the guy again, and especially against that, the 3 safety looks are the ones that we're going to worry about all season. It doesn't matter. You could put up 70 today on Saturday, and you're still going to worry when he has the 3D. Until Quinn beats that, it's going to be something. And you look, maybe you don't have to. Maybe just run the ball on it. Doesn't matter. You can keep running. I want 45 or more total. I would love 30 in the first half. I do not see that happening. I would love it too. I do not see it happening. 70. You want a 70 spot. Look, God bless you for wanting it. But a 70 spot is what you're looking for there with Baylor. 21-3 at halftime, 45-17 the final score. I like that. That's very doable. The 17, I'd like to see them not score 2 touchdowns. I'd like to see our red zone defense be able to step up and not allow the big plays over the top. So you say, I'm going to spot most teams 1 touchdown against this Texas defense. I'll say you get 1 touchdown, and then it's a question of how many times you can actually play well against this defense and one doesn't slip through. And so, maybe 13. Maybe 13 is where I'm looking. I know maybe I'm underestimating this Baylor offense, but I think Texas can hold them to 13-16. I think around that number is what something possible they could hold them to. We get a cobbler. Are you still on the cobbler pie? The pie versus cake conversation we had a few last week, I think it was, with Aaron Hogan and Rob Babers when they were on the show, and we went cobbler. It was pie versus cake. You went cobbler, which I'm assuming you're the kid that enjoys camping. I'm too fat to camp now. I got an AC, a real bed. I tried to go camping with my buddies, and we went down to Del Rio, and we got there too late, so my tent wasn't set up right. So the first night I wake up and the whole tent's collapsing on me, and then there was a huge storm, and my tent's halfway underwater, and I'm sleeping on rocks. No fun. So I just associate cobbler with camping for some reason. So I'm not as big a fan of it. I'm still sticking cake. Still a cake guy. You guys are all crazy. It's away in Waco. 14 in the first half, 31 total. All right, that's very doable. That's a very doable number. 24 at half with Baylor at no more than 3 to 40 with no more than 3, and 46-6 to end it. Just feel like we are back. Yeah, 46-6. I think you feel real good against this Baylor team. 45 with backups playing. Backups playing is a big one. You'd like to see them pull away enough in this game that you do get to see some backups. Sark did talk about it. We may play that sound to you about the wide receivers and trying to get some of those guys into the game. Texas needs to score 42 points, 21 in the first half, balance in order for Sark's offense to have more success. All I want from this team is a win every game by double digits. I like that. I like the theory in that. I'm kind of on board with that because you just want to win, and double-digit wins are good, but those double-digit wins depend. Like that Oklahoma win against SMU, that double-digit win isn't as good as it looked because SMU could have won that game very easily. Defense wins championships. The longer the offense on the field, it gives that awesome defense a chance to stay fresh. Yeah, I do agree. I think that you want to have a few touchdowns. You would like to be able to run the ball well enough that you do get that defense fresh. Do not allow Baylor more opportunities to get the big playoff. Offense 38, defense 13 or less. I like that number. That is a good number from KO there. In all sincerity, I think just win. Look at our Big 12 road record since Sark took over. It's 3-5. I think that this game will tell us a lot about how our team handles success and if it's truly going to be a different story. I think if we cover the 15 points, that will say a lot. Biggest thing when we get the W through. Yeah, you know what? It is a just win. We are in Big 12. It is a point of, you know what? You just have to win these games. Now, we're talking of where do you feel comfortable? I agree with you. Just win. Like, the win is the most important thing. If Texas wins and it's close, we're going to come back on Monday, though, and not be thrilled about this game. So I think we do need to get I'm looking at it, where are we going to be happy with this team? Is kind of where I'm trying to baseline with you guys on Monday, where I can walk in on Monday and say, good game. Or if I know you guys are going to be a little bit more upset, we got to kind of tone it back and, say, all right, let's find out what the problems are. Texas loses if Quinn Ewers turns the ball over. So Sark should watch Miami Dolphins film, break down the motion broken down by Dan Orlovsky on ESPN. Yeah, look, I think that Quinn has done a very good job of protecting the football this season. He understands how valuable it is. Sark preaches it like crazy about turnovers. In fact, you know what? Let me play you this sound. Let me play you, if I can find, emphasizing turnovers. This was Sark today talking about turnovers and kind of defensively, how much they really try and get him and how much he emphasizes keeping the ball on offense. It is a big part of Sark's game plan. Here's Sark talking about emphasizing turnovers.
Well, I think we've emphasized it in a way to where we've worked a lot of drills. And we do a lot of that drill work even in season before every practice. Tuesday and Wednesday practice, we do a turnover circuit, offense versus defense, where we're punching, grabbing at the ball. On Thursday's practice, the defense does their turnover circuit while the offense is getting warmed up. And so, the emphasis on trying to do it. And then B, celebrating the heck out of it. I've borderline thrown a pool party in the middle of practice for a turnover. I just try to make it such a big deal when we create that turnover. And then offensively, not trying to make anybody feel bad, but the message is simple. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy Monday morning when I show good, bad, and ugly, and you're that guy turning that ball over or potentially turning the ball over where that ball's getting punched loose. So we've placed a huge emphasis on it. So far, so good. I think we can be better, especially at protecting the ball. I think we can be better at punching the ball out and creating more fumbles. We're getting interceptions, but I think we can create more fumbles. And so we're not settling where we're at. We're trying to continually improve upon it.
Yeah, and I think he is emphasizing it. Quinn has done a great job of not turning the ball over. You just don't want him to fall into being a check down guy and being so worried about the turnover that you don't try and let it rip at points. I think Sark is trying to set him up with some more plays to, get some more options for man coverage and coverage where he knows he's throwing it one-on-one, and Quinn feels pretty comfortable in that. I think he's a little bit gun shy of throwing where it may be a safety creeping over, especially those giant arcing balls that we saw a couple of in the Alabama game that are great downfield passes, but they only work if it's one-on-one and your guy's got the lead, or else it's just a time bomb waiting to get picked off by a safety. We get a couple more of these texts, and we'll try and get to some NFL stuff as well. So text in if you've got any NFL takes as well, hot seats, any of that, text that in as well, 512-337-3776. I don't really care how many points we score as long as we don't mess up in the red zone. That is a big thing for this Texas team. I think their red zone was a little bit better against Wyoming, but their red zone rate wasn't great of, getting into the end zone versus kicking field goals. We talk about you got to be able to run the ball, but running the ball gets real hard when those safeties are creeped up, and the safety's only 5 or 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage because you're 8 yards, 10 yards from the end zone. Once you get into that area, trying to stretch out and get the blockers you want to have in front of you, but also get wide receivers active, getting Quinn Ewers to make that pass when everything is a bit more crunched in and that risk for a turnover is a lot more. Those are things. I agree with you. Red zone play is a big factor that we want to see improve week-to-week basis of Quinn getting a little bit more assertive in it and comfortable in it, because I think that's going to be a big part is Quinn seeing these defenses, being able to figure out where the play is. Now, a couple of these are drops. There's been 2 or 3 drops that are not Quinn's fault at all that should have been touchdowns, and they end up being field goals. So it's not all on Quinn, but it is going to be on Quinn to continue to spot those wide open plays where he put the ball where it needed to be. He's either Sark called it or Quinn, figured it out, and you got the ball where it needed to be, and the guy just dropped it. He's hit a couple of those. Even that one in the Alabama game where it looked like Kool-Aid McKinstry got in there and he got a pass breakup on Jonathan Brooks. That was a perfect pass. It was done perfectly. If Jonathan Brooks sees the ball and instead of, worries about seeing Kool-Aid McKinstry possibly taking his head off, then he probably takes that and walks into the end zone because McKinstry is going to be flying in front of him. So I think he's done well, and some of those numbers may be a little off because of drops, but that's part of it too. You got to be able to get sure-handed in that red zone because you may be taking shots, and guys are constantly going to be around you. I like that a lot, though. You got to get the red zone. 20-plus points per half for us and less than 10 point per half for Baylor. I agree with that one as well. Winning on first downs always from a man, Chan. You just still concerned. You're still concerned, Chan. Don't be concerned. I know we play to our competition, but Texas has been doing a little bit better. I think that was more about the 3 highs. The 3 highs for Wyoming, the 3 high for Rice, kind of. It's somewhat of Sark's kryptonite. We heard Joe Cook talk about that earlier. We'll put that up on the podcast page. Joe Cook talking about it. It's somewhat of his kryptonite. They're going to have to figure that out because more and more teams are going to keep doing it against Texas. I guess their defense or special teams could score, but that's when it becomes a runaway game. You just want to get turnovers. So the score or not, it's if you can get a couple turnovers on this Baylor team, it will help out a lot. 20-plus points and a double-digit lead at half. Just far enough ahead to let Malik and Arch play a quarter or two. Bench play. I would really love to see the bench play. I'd love to see Jonte Cook get in. I'd love to see Ryan Niblett get in. I'd love to see Isaiah Neyor get in. I'd love to see Kane get in. Get those wide receivers. Get some wide receiver reps in there as well. Those young guys are the future at wide receiver because Jay Witt's going after this year. Xavier Worthy's going after this year. A.D. Mitchell's probably going after this year. J.T. Sanders is probably going after this year. So I'd like to see some of the new guys get a little bit of playing time wherever you can because a lot of those guys are going to be gone after this season if everything goes the way Texas wants. He's going to be a very different wide receiver core with a new quarterback next season. Let those young guys get a little bit of playing time. 42-10, 14-3 at half. Only 14.5? That's doable. I like 42-10. It's a real number. 35-plus on Aranda's D, especially because it means so much to Baylor to beat us this year. Like everyone, our D needs to hold between 10 and 14. 35-plus, I think, is really a good number against an Aranda D. You're right. They are going to come out. But I think that may be a little bit of a problem if those guys get over-anxious. If the guys get a little over-anxious and are trying to really pass rush hard and don't get the pass rush in, then it's going to mean that Quinn Ewers is able to get out on them. If you're pass rushing and you miss the tackle, I think they, we may see some guys trying go out and take a big hit on somebody, but if you miss that hit, if you get out there and can play, then we'll know. Then you can get out there. How can we watch the punt, pass, and kick competition? I've not even heard an update on it. I will talk to my man Jacob and Ty, and we'll figure. I'm sure they're going to post it up soon enough. I have not heard anything. Neither one of them has sent me an update, so I do not know. Jacob has not told me. That Ty, he told me last time that Ty embarrassed himself at the wing challenge. So I don't think he's embarrassed himself, or else he has so bad that Jacob has refused to text me and tell me that Ty has embarrassed himself because he knows I take enjoyment messing with Ty. I love my man Ty. We did Instant Serious together when he first came into the station. I love Ty, great guy, and I hope he did well against Casey. I want to see him get his confidence back on some of these challenges. I want to see 35 points per game, rush yards combined 200+, and on D hold the score under 20. I like that one. 35 points is kind of where I think that's where we're really, if you're at 35 points, I think you're going to be happy. I think 40 points is where we're starting to push it. And Texas would have had 40 against Wyoming if Jaden Blue doesn't have the fumble. Don't want to pile on to Jaden Blue, but I'm sure Sark piled on him enough. 24-3 at halftime, 48-13 final. I like that score as well. It's going to be tough to get to 48 against a Dave Aranda defense, but if they can, that team is going to look really good. And I think, that's one of those ones that pollsters are going to look at. This is a week 2. We have to remember Notre Dame is playing Ohio State. So you could drop if you don't have a great showing. One of those guys, whoever wins that game, could easily jump into the top 3, kind of bump you down if that happens. And we also got to see the Alabama game. Alabama's playing Ole Miss this week. But if Alabama loses to Ole Miss, kind of takes a little bit of luster off that win. So the ranking-wise, as much as it doesn't matter, you just got to win all your games and you'll get to where you want to be. Could all be there. Minimize drop balls and 5+ yards per attempt, average runs, less drop passes. I like all this. The minimizing drop balls is, of course, a huge, huge factor. Huge factor, especially in that red zone. Keep them off the field and crush in the second half. It's going to be hot, and availability is key. Rotate that defense. I like all of this. Score 42 and win by 21. I think if you score 42, you should win by more than 21. Just personally, I think this defense for Texas is really good. I don't have as much faith in the Baylor offense. Tech had 4 turnovers against Oregon leading into the fourth. Could have won by with a minute left. Then one of the turnovers. Look, I know you want to say that Quinn is not playing better than Texas Tech's quarterback. He is. He's got 3 wins. I know the numbers haven't been there, but that's play calling. Quinn Ewers is doing exactly what he needs to be doing. He has not done anything wrong. He hasn't looked, he didn't look great in the Wyoming game. Again, we'll say three safeties high is going to be a problem for him. But I do not take that Quinn has not outplayed Texas Tech's quarterback, Tyler Shuck. I don't think so. I think Quinn has outplayed him, and he's also 3-0. So that at the end of the day, if you're making the decisions that don't cost your team, that I'm going to go with that guy. Aren't we supposed to be better than Texas State if the score isn't way better than 42 and winning by 11 the rest of the season has doubts moving forward? That's not entirely true because, the same reason that we were close with Rice is because we were preparing for Alabama. Baylor didn't give a crap about Texas State, didn't take them seriously, and that's why Texas State creeped up on them. Also, if we allow 31 points to Baylor and win by 11, I'll be pissed off at that too because I don't think we should allow 30 points to Baylor. I think Texas State played a good game and they won. They did their job. I'm not going to compare Texas and Texas State. I know it's fun to do against Baylor, but it's 2 different things. This is a team that we've played Baylor every single year. They're pissed off at us. The fans are going to be there cranked up, ready to go. I don't really put too much emphasis on Texas State versus Baylor versus us versus Baylor. That may be something they're going to do in San Marcos. But Dave Aranda did not really – I don't think Dave Aranda cared enough about Texas State. That's one of the reasons why this team is 1-2. They were trying to get to Big 12 week. That's what they were trying to do. We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into a little NFL. We'll keep taking your text, 512-337-3776. I do want to talk a little bit of NFL before we get out of here. Of course, the news about the Cowboys and some bad news out of Houston as well. Just a little bit. We'll get you ready for tonight's game. We may play some sound from earlier and more of your text, 512-337-3776. When we come back here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Back on the horn here on a Thursday afternoon, playing our big songs. That's the last one of the big songs. We'll get into a 512 Friday tomorrow, but I hope you enjoyed our big music theme. Get us ready for Big 12 conference play coming up on Saturday. Love you guys joining the show on the text line, 512-337-3776. You guys been killing it today. We asked you earlier, what's the number that you need to see from this Texas offense to feel comfortable going into Big 12 conference play, feel comfortable with this offense after a Wyoming game where you may not have felt fully confident in it, a Rice game where you may have not felt fully confident in this offense. Where do you want to see the number? This is kind of an easy evaluation. We asked you that. You guys have been killing it. Send it in. I think we're getting around 40. Some people are pretty demanding. 150, 60, 70. Some of you guys feel that this Baylor offense is going to put up some points. I don't know. I'm going to play a little bit from me and Rob B in just a minute so we can get a little bit of, their viewpoint on Sawyer Robertson. They know a little bit. They have some good intel on Sawyer Robinson as well, the backup quarterback who's going to be playing. And I know Wyoming had a backup quarterback as well. The difference of the Wyoming backup quarterback and Baylor, and also Wyoming scored one touchdown. It was a rushing touchdown. But the difference of the Wyoming backup quarterback and the Baylor backup quarterback is we know who the Baylor backup quarterback is, and we know he's playing. We did not know that Wyoming was going to have a backup quarterback and that he was going to be playing. So I'm sure there was some prep for it, but there was a lot more prep for the starting quarterback for Wyoming. I do want to talk a little NFL, if you guys will indulge me before we get to a little bit more talk of Baylor versus Texas. Of course, the big news today, Trayvon Diggs for the Cowboys tears his ACL in practice. So the Cowboys take a huge shot. Cowboys take a huge shot in the defense. This defense had been killing it. We were playing sound yesterday from Dan Quinn talking about how he's learned to upgrade even more that defense of positionless football and being able to move guys around. But also, he talked to a coaching friend of his who told him, well, I could tell if you lined up 3 down linemen, then I knew what Micah was going to do. And if you lined up 4 down linemen, I knew what Micah was going to do. He says, okay, well, how can we switch up our personnel and switch up our positioning and change it up so we don't really have to change what we want to do, but change up what we're showing so that people can't read our tells. Just like playing a poker game and someone says, well, your eyes do this. You go, well, I'll put on sunglasses. And that's how Dan Quinn did it. He said, we're going to put on some of those sunglasses and you won't be able to tell now our Twitch. You got to find a different tell. So they'll find out something different or maybe they'll figure something out. But it is a big hit. You're happy now that you picked up Gilmore in the offseason, because if you don't pick up Gilmore in the offseason, this secondary is hurting pretty bad. You make the trade where you get rid of Boss Man Fats, pick up, we'll say Chris O as the other cornerback. He is going to still be in backup. I believe they're going to try and move Deron Bland over into the other position and, again, across from Gilmore and keep Jordan Lewis in the nickel package. So they're going to try and move some guys around inside and outside. But it is a huge blow because he is one of your dynamic players. You just paid him. I'm sure he is not thrilled to tear his ACL in practice as well. But those things are happening. You're happy to have a coach like Dan Quinn. This does now put it on to a little bit more emphasis that this offense is going to have to keep going. And this offense is going to have to figure out, a little bit more ball control and a little bit more trying to put up some points. I think they will. I think Mike McCarthy has done a very good job of being the company man he needs to be, something that we complained about Kellen Moore last year. We would complain about Kellen Moore. I would complain about Kellen Moore trying to go too much into his own bag and doing something that may not be best for the team. So I'm pretty okay with the fact that Mike McCarthy is doing what's best for the team so far. And we've seen that work out pretty well. Another note over in Houston, Derek Stingley, the cornerback who wasn't really healthy last year, hurt his hamstring and missed most of the season last year for the Texans, comes back this season, is playing really good football, and hurts his hamstring in practice. He is now going to be out, they believe, 4 weeks. Going to try and get him healthy. We know Jalen Petrie, the guy, second-year player, had a bruised lung, I believe, so he is still coming back. They're starting to get some players back. This O-line is beat up, and the Texans are just very beat up. Not what you want to see when you trade away your first-round draft pick next season. You kind of were hoping to be able to get 3 or 4 more wins that you're going to be lost in there. But I do think later on in the season, as some of these players are getting healthy, a lot of them are not out for the season. Stingley's out 4 weeks. Juice Scruggs is out 4 weeks. Laramie Tunsil's knee is getting better. You may be able to get some of these guys back, this O-line picked back up. C.J. Stroud is actually doing pretty well. A weird stat that there's 2 quarterbacks in the top 10 quarterbacks in passing yards right now with no interceptions. Both of them don't have a win. C.J. Stroud, and Justin Herbert. And that gets me to where I want to talk about the best 0-2 teams. And we may get to worst ones if we have time. If not, we'll get to them tomorrow. But the best 0-2 teams looking right now in the NFL, because it is still early enough. 0-2, you're able to come in and kind of bounce out of this. You're still able to recover and turn your season around. We know Houston is not one of those teams. Arizona is not one of those teams. Chicago, what is happening in Chicago? You know, I don't want to speculate on what is happening with the defensive coordinator. We've heard rumors. Hopefully that is not true. Hopefully that is just some weird reporting and somebody getting over anxious. Hopefully that's not true. I've read it too many places. I don't like it. But hopefully it's not true. Denver, I don't think is bouncing back. Sean Payton, I think this Russell Wilson experiment is not going to work with Sean Payton. I don't know if he may be walking back some of the trash talk he's doing to Nathaniel Hackett after this 0-2 start. I don't know if they bounce back. Carolina, Bryce Young now has an injured ankle. They have the whole issue that they kept trying to quarterback sneak it, but you can't quarterback sneak it with Bryce Young because he's too small. So they'd have to bring in Andy Dalton, but once you bring in Andy Dalton, everybody knows you're quarterback sneaking it. So then you have to run a trick play off the side of it. So you're trying to buy it, but now everybody knows that you put in Andy Dalton, you're probably not going to quarterback sneak it. It's a weird world they're living in Carolina right now. Don't see them coming back and making a big difference. And then we get into some of the fun teams. The Los Angeles Chargers. If I'm running that team, and I know that there is issues with money in this organization because it is a pass down team. But if I'm running the LA Chargers and I have control, Brandon Staley is fired. He's gone. I don't even let him coach this week, to be honest with you. I say, man, I can't believe we waited this long. I fired Brandon Staley because you win that Miami game if Brandon Staley coaches a better defense. And I get Miami's really good offense, but they played a good enough game. And honestly, as much as I don't like Kellen Moore or didn't like him in Dallas, I don't dislike Kellen Moore. I just didn't like him in Dallas. I didn't like the fit with Dak Prescott. I do like the fit with Justin Herbert. I put Kellen Moore as the interim head coach of this team, get another defensive mind in there, and I try and go with it. I think they're doing pretty good. The question is, how healthy is Joe Burrow? Joe Burrow's healthy. He's not started well in the past. I'm not as worried. I think Cincinnati is going to be okay. And so I'm going to say the Chargers and Cincinnati are fighting right now. Until Brandon Staley is fired, Cincinnati is still the best 0-2 team in my mind. And Minnesota Vikings, they make the trade for Cam Akers. There's a reason he's available for nothing. You didn't build your O-line. You built a whole game plan, this screwy way to try and get, just throw the ball. And I'll still say, I don't think that Minnesota re-signs and doesn't trade. I don't think in 3 years that Justin Jefferson will still be a Minnesota Viking. I do not think he will be. They got rid of Randy Moss after they paid him. I know that's old ownership. That was Red McCombs, but they got rid of him. They got rid of Stephon Diggs when he wanted money. I think they're not going to succeed. They're going to say we're a small market. We got to move on. That's what I think is going to happen. I want to play you something for me and Rob B. Talking about Baylor. Talking about the new quarterback, the backup quarterback for Baylor, and what Texas needs to do, and kind of a preview for Texas Baylor from Ian Rob B. from Hook 'em Up this morning, 6 to 11 a.m. every morning right here on The Horn.
All right, let's talk some Texas Baylor. Shout out to my man CJ Vogel, does a great job over at Football Brainiacs. He had a nice stat, a factoid.
Love the facts.
That I went and did some research on. He's at CJ Vogel _TFB in the Twitterverse. Baylor's quarterback Sawyer Robertson. We talked about him because he's inefficient. All right, he's a very limited quarterback. But this was a little surprising. He actually has the longest ADOT, which is average distance of target of any quarterback in the Big 12. 12.3 yards. They throw it downfield with this dude. Baylor throws the ball beyond 20 yards, the most of any team in the Big 12, throwing the fewest screens and quick passes behind the line of scrimmage in conference play. That is troubling because it doesn't match up with what I've seen from Sawyer Robertson, and maybe they shouldn't be doing that. They should be the opposite. They should be throwing fewer deep balls, but they do throw some deep balls, though. They will chunk it out there. I guess they believe maybe that's a strength in his skill set, but I think they should be throwing more high percentage passes, easy completions for him instead of the deep ball, but they believe they can push the ball downfield. I think it's because they wanted he to complement their running game with that zone
back
running
the
game.
Safeties up.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think. It's also to make you pay for bringing your safeties up.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Sawyer, I mean, if you got a quarterback who's completing 44% of his passes, you might want to throw some quick ones. Get him some easy ones.
Right? But that makes sense as to why the completion percentage is so
right.
low.
You're right. And
Because
he's
they're
throwing the 3 picks.
Yeah. They're throwing it downfield a lot.
Yeah.
Which is probably too much.
Too much. We'll see. Maybe they change that up a little bit because I'm sure the offense for Jeff Grimes was designed around Blake Shapen. You know, you got a new quarterback in there. You got to figure out his strengths and play to it a little bit. Maybe Texas sees something a little bit different on Saturday because they're going to have to do something because the Texas defense has been their best and most consistent unit without a doubt. They've been great stopping the run, and Baylor wants to run the ball. Front seven and the secondary is playing at a pretty darn high level. Ryan Watts is playing at a high level. The safety play with the Jade Barron at the star position. You really like that for Texas in that matchup. I think the Texas is more talented in their secondary versus the receiving core of the Baylor Bears. And it's been a pretty shocking fall for Dave Aranda, Rod. I mean, since winning the Big 12, they're 7-9. They've lost 6 straight games to Power 5 opponents.
And it's the more shocking thing is that after you win a championship, I mean, most of the time recruiting spikes. Recruiting, you get a spike in recruiting. There's a windfall in recruiting because your program is hot, your program is recognizable, and you're on a high. I don't know if Baylor got the bump, and it's weird they won the Big 12, but I don't see the talent bump that they got from it. TCU just had their best recruiting season in the history of the program. They didn't win the Big 12. They didn't win the national title either, but they went somewhere. They went to the national title, which shows you that once you achieve, it's easier to recruit. So I wonder if they just didn't maximize on the recruiting trail during that time.
Maybe Dave Aranda's not a good recruiter.
That could be.
Doesn't have a good recruiting staff.
Man,
I mean, look, in college football, you have to be able to coach, which I think Dave Aranda can do. I mean, Dave Aranda has shown he can coach D, he can coach ball.
Yeah.
But can he recruit? I mean, you have to combine the ability to acquire talent and bring in players and coaching. And then when you're a defensive coordinator only, you're not in charge of recruiting, right? So that could be a limitation that Dave Aranda has. And, Ed Orgeron could recruit, but he couldn't coach, right? So now he did win a national title, to give him credit, because the talent outweighed the coaching.
Well, he had Dave Aranda on that staff. He had Joe Brady
they had
on
a great
that
staff, and it's LSU.
He had a great staff.
And Ed Orgeron can bring in talent.
Yes, he can.
He just couldn't stop dating women, and bringing them to practice and all kinds of stuff, hitting on Board of Regents members' wives at gas stations. But then that's what you're looking for, and that's why you kind of like the trajectory of Sark is he gets an A+ in talent acquisition. His recruiting classes, the staff he's built to recruit, Jeff Banks spearheading that, and then the portal and NIL at Texas helps a lot. But at the same time, he also is now showing, I think, that he's a pretty good coach, too. You can combine the two, then you can win at a high level in college football. You have to have both of them. Maybe Dave Aranda, not such a hot recruiter.
That could be the case, too.
And hasn't embraced the transfer portal. He's kind of gone the way of Mike Gundy and Dabo Swinney and some other coaches on that some coaches are all in and, getting after it, and then they're reaping the benefits of that. So.
So just throwing it out there with Sawyer Robertson, just going back to it, they're going to chunk it deep. They're going to test Texas deep. Like I said, I think it's a misguided mentality, but that's part of what Baylor does offensively. So Texas DB should be ready for it. I think they will. He's not necessarily that accurate, and they don't have I don't think they have skill position guys that Texas needs to fear on the outside. They need to be ready. And plus, I also think to throw it deep, they probably will go back to what Bama did to throw it deep, which is go to bunch formations. Remember, Bama had a lot of deep connections downfield vertically, especially, inside, kind of in between the numbers. And they targeted Texas safeties there, and they actually averaged, I think, over 18 yards per attempt when they were targeting any player who was in a bunch formation at the time. That's just a cluster of wide receivers, or a cluster of receivers, period. It could be a tight end or a running back, whatever. So that I think Baylor will take some of that from that Bama game, just because that's something that they do really well too. All right, one other little nugget on the other side of the ball for the Texas-Baylor matchup. Baylor's rush defense is not great. Is you go look at it, Baylor has allowed the most rushing yards in the Big 12.
Yeah.
So far this season, allowing 6 yards per carry and over 200 rushing yards a game. Texas, remember my idea for Texas to juice the script, if you will, to start out a little bit faster, to start out more like they did in Sark's previous years, right? His first 20 plays, which is his script, to start out in 12 personnel, to start out in one back, two tight ends, just because if Baylor's so concerned about their rush defense and they want to fix it, then they will either put extra guys in the box to to insulate, all right, and shore up the rush defense, or they are, they're not really concerned with their rush defense and they're going to try to defend Texas weapons on the perimeter, which is their passing game weapons like X-Man, A.D. Mitchell, Jay Witt, J.T. Sanders. Either way, Texas wins if they come out in 12 personnel. If they try to defend your weapons and they want numbers in the passing game, you can just run it down their throat because you'll have the mass advantage, you'll have the numbers advantage. If they try to insulate their rush defense and they want to throw more guys in the box because they know that's where they're weakest and they want to, guard against that, well, Texas also wins because that means you're going to get one-on-one matchups on the outside with either A.D. Mitchell or J.T. Sanders. Probably not X-Man because they're probably going to roll coverage his way. So either way, that's why I think you let them pick their poison. And then you can come out and make an easy adjustment.
Yeah, and that's why I said yesterday, through 3 games, there's not really a stat that tells you Baylor can hang in this game. But, it's conference play. It'll be a sellout crowd. It's going to be raucous. It's that environment. It's the real season now. To whatever's happened so far, doesn't matter if you win this game if you're Baylor. But they haven't shown much on the field so far that indicates that they can.
Ready for Texas versus Baylor on Saturday. Pre-game show is going to be happening out at Doc's in Sunset Valley, Doc's backyard. Going to be a fun time with Ian Robbie. I'm going to try and make it out there. We'll see how my day goes. We're going to take one more break, wrap it up for you here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019 and 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Wrapping things up here on the Sports Complex on a Thursday afternoon. Appreciate everybody playing along with us on the text line. To the texter asking about Tyler Shuck versus Quinn Ewers, I get that their numbers are similar. One played Alabama, one played Oregon. Shuck has run the ball a hell of a lot better. I'll give you that. Neither one of them is in the Heisman conversation, though. I know Quinn has Heisman odds because people think he's going to do well throughout the season. But I don't think either one of their stats put him in, neither one of them's going to New York right now. So I'm not saying Quinn is either. I'd like to see Quinn play better, too. I'm just not going to compare him to a arbitrary quarterback. I don't think that they're comparable quarterbacks right now. That's my opinion. Just my opinion. Enjoy the game tonight. I think San Francisco handles it easy. It is curious. Can they do better than the Cowboys against San Francisco? We'll see. We'll be back tomorrow with more Sports Complex. Until then, be safe, be kind, keep your underwear clean, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow for more Sports Complex right here on The Horn.